Thanks for staying on. South Africa is in the grip of a deepening unemployment crisis, with more companies announcing plans to retrench more workers, with one of the highest official jobless rates in the world, affecting millions of lives and threatening the nation's social and economic stability. And of course, to add to that, the pressure to find solutions is immense. However, this crisis is increasingly characterized by counterproductive and pervasive blame game, where various stakeholders point fingers at each other instead of forging a cohesive path forward. Let's discuss this now, joined in the studio by SAFTU General Secretary Zwelinzima Vavi. On the line, Cosatu's Zanele Sabela. And in a moment, we'll have Dr. Kwezi Mabasa from the Center for Researching Education and Labor. He will be joining as the conversation continues, we are hoping. But nonetheless, we'll continue with you who are already on. Dr. Vavi, good to have you, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Mdluli.
Zanele, good afternoon to you too. Thank you very much for coming on.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having us.
Let's begin here. I mean, we've been having this conversation for decades, if not more, right? And every time it comes down almost to the same thing. But if you look beneath the numbers and the headlines, there are several powerful shifts that are happening not just in South Africa, they are happening the world over. In fact, the unemployment numbers have been bad, particularly in the world over since the pandemic. So South Africa is not really an exception. So what are the forces that are shaping that kind of landscape globally and then bringing it to South Africa?
Well, other countries have recovered. They've recovered from the 2008 massive, some people argue, biggest world over economic crisis. They've recovered from the 2019 biggest pandemic to have visited the world. And many countries, in particular of the developed nations, are down to the single figures in terms of their unemployment rate. We are backing the trend in South Africa. And I think it will not be good to hide behind the international crisis of capitalism or the pandemics. We have to face our own reality. Yeah. The reality, number one, is that we have become the country with the highest levels of unemployment amongst industrialized and industrializing nations. Okay. And we have been holding that title for a good number of years before the COVID. We are the country with the highest youth unemployment in the whole world, according to the ILO and every other study. Yeah. And we've been holding that title for many years, since the dawn of democracy. The reality is that we have halved the capacity to manufacture goods in South Africa between 1994 and to date. That trend would have started even earlier in 1990. Whereas the manufacturing sector used to contribute between 20 to 22% to the GDP, it is now down to 11, 12%, somewhere there. Yeah. Meaning that we have an idling industrial capacity. Others say is sitting around 22, 23%. Others put that number even higher, meaning that we are not manufacturing to consume the goods that we are manufacturing. We increasingly relying on finished goods coming from mainly China these days, but everywhere else in the world. We continue to export our raw minerals unprocessed. We don't build secondary industries in South Africa.
Interesting that you raised that, because Asia is looked at as one of the biggest regions in terms of contribution to the labor force. So they are employing more than
because we are exporting jobs to China and to other Asian countries, including India. Yeah. They bring back to our country finished products, and we've been stuck to that structure since the days of colonial and apartheid. Yeah. This is beneficial to our leaders' families who are in the coal industry, who have adopted a short-termist approach to the economy. As long as the benefits are still very good at this moment, they don't care about the long-term effect of this, what we call the old, not just neoliberal, but it's actually the colonial structure of the economy. We didn't change it. We're still maintaining it as it is. The results, we're going to come back to speak about it.
Let's bring Zanele into this. From Cosatu's point of view, what is shaping this particular landscape? I mean, I've given you the numbers that we are looking at. A lot of jobs that are going to be lost, some 300,000, I'm sure, according to the latest numbers. Others are saying, well, Vavi has already spoken about the idling of our industrial capacity. Others are saying demographics in high-income nations, people are getting older, so the workforce there is struggling because the people are getting older. But in low-income regions like ourselves, there is young people who are coming in, flooding the labor market. Technology access, they're saying, is a problem. But in South Africa, most importantly, this is the issue that always comes up: economic uncertainty, rising cost of living, slow growth in the economy, and, well, they'll say squeezing wages are one of those issues. How do you read it as Cosatu?
Well, like you said, we have an economy that actually has been growing at 1% since 2008. And so in that very, very high unemployment rate, and the young people mostly, between 15 and 24 who are hardest hit. And so it is those, the fact that also, in terms of, we all know the problems we've been having with Eskom, although it's on its way to recovery, but our electricity has all of a sudden become very, very expensive. You will know that ArcelorMittal has complained about our very high energy cost, and it is now saying that it's closing shop. It also complained about the transport costs. That is linked directly to Transnet, which also needs to start working effectively, but it's not at this point in time. And so in terms of ArcelorMittal, they've also spoken about very cheap steel imports coming into the country, flooding the market. And that, what government was trying to do there was actually give a chance to small steel makers and open up the market to them. But then what has that done now? It has actually impacted ArcelorMittal that much that there are 3,500 direct jobs that are meant to be lost when it closes its Newcastle and Vereeniging plants. But then downstream, we're looking at about 100,000 jobs in the value chain that will also be impacted. And so there are those issues. In terms of electricity, you've heard now this latest thing that NERSA, in terms of the calculations that they did, they made a mistake and Eskom took them to court, and now we are sitting there there'll be another increase to electricity, which also doesn't help us. We have seen crime also is not helping. The wasteful expenditure within government is not helping. The fact that municipalities also owe Eskom about 94 billion rands is not helping. Our municipalities and public services I just have collapsed and they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And it's all those things that are happening. And the fact that government still insists on its trajectory of austerity. And this hasn't helped our economy at all. And we thought the GNU would bring in a different way of thinking around jobs, but we are still to see nothing has happened. And so it's over a year now that they've been in power and nothing has happened there.
So are you saying to us then that, Vavi, as unions, right, if, one, we fix the energy situation, so the rising costs, right, we drop those, fuel, drop those. If we take care of corruption, we fix the NPA, we fix the police, we get those things going, we fix municipalities, and we get that going, this picture will begin to turn around.
If we fix the structure of the economy, if we stop this extravism, meaning extracting raw minerals and exporting it to other countries to create jobs elsewhere, and only for us to receive finished products. If we were to focus on re-industrializing and strengthening the manufacturing sector to withstand today's challenges, that included the introduction of the fourth industrial
program. That the last time I looked, had about 100 industrialists. I don't know where it's sitting today, but this was like probably 2 years ago when I heard that.
This is how we started the crisis. In 1994, instead of prioritizing industrial policy, we prioritized the reduction of the tariffs that were protecting our sectors, manufacturing sector in the main. And the ministers at that time said, welcome South Africa to the chilly winds of international competition. They dropped the levels of tariffs even faster than what was required by the World Trade Organization.
Is that why we had small-scale steel makers? Which,
absolutely, Zanele was spot on. And then it was only around after 2009 did South Africa develop an industrial policy, the EPAP, for the first time, 15, 20 years late. And then we didn't support it with a rethought fiscal and monetary policies. So this supposedly progressive industrial policy became a slave to this ultra-conservative fiscal and monetary policy that was driven by the austerity programs that robbed the country.
Simple English, you didn't give it money.
We didn't give it money, so it became a white elephant policy within the state that have no real support, and it failed. And this is the consequences. Now let me just look at the consequences in addition to what Zanele is saying. Daybreak, which is supported by IPC money, which is actually workers' money,
poultry company.
It is going to lose 2,200 jobs unless the Minister of Trade and Industry and Competition and Minister of Employment and Labour intervenes. The Coca-Cola in East London have announced that it is closing down that plant. Zanele have already spoken about ArcelorMittal and what it's going to mean in terms of the downstream industry. Glencore and Samanco have announced that they are going to cut off 3,000 jobs. We know about Goodyear, which is closing down, and 900 workers are going to be forced to join the queue of 12.6 million people who are unemployed. Ford, here in Pretoria, has announced that it is retrenching 474. SAB has been slaughtering workers for the past 5 years. Over 1,500 workers have been slaughtered, and recently it wants to slaughter another 233 jobs. The South African Post Office slaughtered 4,000 jobs at the beginning of this year. There are only 4,000 other workers left there. And remember that before privatization, commercialization, there were 61 to 67,000 jobs in the post office. Transnet is saying it is going to, in fact, it is embarking on the voluntary retrenchment packages. The SAB is saying that it is going to look at the direction of workers. Zanele says the retrenchment has become an option. Everybody, every day, we are waking up to a new announcement.
But let's talk about this. There is this platform called NEDLAC, where everybody is supposed to sit around the table. Yourselves, I know you were added lately onto that list. The business, the politicians come around and say, look at these numbers. Look at all these people that are going to lose their jobs. Can we hold this? Because you guys are the ones who are owning the companies. Let's fix this before these people are out of work.
I wish that it was that simple.
Let's take a break. We'll come back after. Back with you on the Newsfeed PM. Thanks for staying on. Some 300,000 jobs are said to be lost, at least from the latest statistics from the South Africa's quarterly labor force survey, revealing 291,000 jobs in the first quarter of 2025 would have been lost. So you are counting even more potential jobs that are going to be lost in a variety of sectors, from poultry, to steel, to automobile, across the board, to beverages, across the board. How are business leaders responding to this at Nedleg, is what I want to
Unfortunately, well, the point that I have always complained about, even in my days in Cosatu, is that their business is increasingly sending the most junior people it can find to Nedleg. And that's why you have its leader as a black executive somewhere. The real captains of industry are not interested in a discussion. The real captains of industry are idling somewhere in Stellenbosch or between Stellenbosch, London, New York, and guaranteeing the levels of their profits in South Africa. And the call that we want to make is that surely Nedleg as a supreme structure to coordinate dialogue between these class forces ought to improve its workings. Yes. It can't continue as if this is not the figures we are talking about.
So, Zanele, how do we redesign this conversation, right? How, with your alliance partners, how do you redesign the roles that need to be played by government, by business leaders, by yourself as labor, ensuring that we handle this situation responsibly and we save these jobs? This is hectic.
I think more than anything, we all need to realize we all have a stake in this country. And so for business they have this go-to kind of stance. Whenever there's a bit of decrease in their profits, the first thing they want to do is reduce the workforce. And that shouldn't be where they start. We need to explore other options and look at what else needs to be done, because we'll know that for every job, the person probably supports about 7 other people. And so when we look at that and think of it as part of, we all have a stake in this country, then business also needs to come to the table and stop retrenchments for one, and look at ways and not hold on to cash and invest in this economy. Because the fact that we're always harping on about the fact that there should be foreign direct investment, we need to start doing exactly what Trump is doing. We need to invest in our own economy and not be so beholden to other companies, to other countries to actually come and save us. Yeah. Like now, when looking at ArcelorMittal and the fact that it wants to close, there is a deal being spoken about where the IDC will increase its stake in ArcelorMittal. Because when we look long term, the problem is also in terms of how we look at things short term. So if we look long term, it might be a good idea to actually make sure that we save ArcelorMittal, not the plants, at least our ability to manufacture long steel in this country. And so these are the things that we now start to think about. And then the government also needs to make sure that it provides that environment where companies are able to create these jobs that they talk about. Eskom, Transnet,
what is that
Metro
environment?
Rail.
What is that environment, very quickly before we run out of time? What is that environment? Because SAFTU has been, and even I suppose during his days at Cosatu, has been of the view that the politicians are the ones who are messing this thing up. They can fix it by changing policy, right? So what is that environment that politicians need to create?
That environment that they need to create is, I've just spoken about, Eskom. Eskom needs to be fixed. Eskom needs that support to actually make sure that it provides the electricity that, like Glencore needs to actually run its smelters. There's no need for us to now be talking about cutting jobs there when things are working. Transnet also needs support to make sure that it works effectively and is able to provide the freight, because by rail things are cheaper to move commodities by rail rather than putting them on road. It's a lot more expensive, and our roads do take a beating from that. And to provide Infrastructure. Eskom itself needs to be have money to improve its distribution in terms of the lines, about 14,000 kilometers. And so all of that government needs to, and also government needs to, its own institutions, government needs to make sure that it provides the services that businesses need to strive in, and people also. Metro rail needs to be fixed so that people have the cheapest transport to get onto the train, to go to work and to come back, because it's heavily subsidized. We let it go. And so that's the other thing that government needs to, there are there's low-hanging fruit that government needs to take care of to make sure that we get to the next step.
Yeah, they'll say we are doing that already. They will tell you that, I don't know, what is the number? Is it 7? I'm wrong with my numbers. Private companies that they've given concessions to fix the railways, so they'll be in by 2026, I believe so. So they'll take care of that. They'll fix the roads. So some of the cargo will move from the roads and will get onto the railway. They'll tell you that we've stopped the leakage, at least for now, at Eskom. It's working. Yesterday we were told we are not going to have load shedding, or the probability of load shedding is none. This summer, they are doing stuff to fix that. They are reinvesting into the network infrastructure. So they'll say, we are doing those things.
Let me make this appeal. We need a new revolution in South Africa. And that revolution cannot be driven by a fragmented trade union movement that has weakened itself so terribly. We need unity within SAFTU. We need to drop all prejudices against one another and focus on what matters to the workers the most. We need unity between SAFTU, Cosatu, FEDUSA, and NACTU. We need unity between the South African trade union movement with the rest of the working class organizing in our communities, guided by one slogan: organize or starve. All symbols put forward. Don't continue to moan. Fight back against what is unfolding in the country. We are our own worst enemies at this particular juncture. We're running up and down here, putting on the table the most brilliant suggestions and policy alternatives you can imagine. The crisis is that we do not have the power to force the state and the employers of this country to listen to us, because we have allowed ourselves to be divided by the other side.
Right.
And
unlike the taxi industry, those guys didn't know how to force government to listen.
We don't have that power anymore. We lost that power, and all together, and we need to rebuild. And we can only rebuild if the leadership of the trade union movement here can accept that there is just no other alternative except unity and strengthening the unity of the trade union and the rest of the working class. Without that, we are going to be here to say this and this ought to be happening. Nobody is going to listen. We will continue to just
hold meetings and hold conferences
and die on the Indian Ocean and hope that we can change the color. Nothing is going to change until we go back to the streets and mobilize to force the government to listen and to force the employers of this country to listen. That's what I want to say and to communicate at this moment.
Let's leave it there. Much appreciated. SAFTU's General Secretary, Zwelinzima Vavi, as well, the spokesperson for Cosatu, Zanele, Sabela.